Okay. I was talking and I was on mute. Hi, everybody. How's everyone doing? Thank you so much for coming to this lecture. I'm just gonna go ahead and put my phone on silent here. Okay. Making sure my dog's in the correct position so she can see me and doesn't start barking like a maniac because she can't see me. Anya, you're recording this? Okay, good. All right, welcome everybody. So it's 7:02. So we're gonna get started with just a quick little meditation to just ground ourselves into the space so we can be present, so we can absorb and learn. Now, also, I just want to say we are recording this meeting. So of course, you're more than welcome to take notes, but I do want to encourage you to be as present as possible and, maybe just take like one word little notes, not try to write down everything I'm saying because it will be recorded and you can always go back and do whatever it is you need to do. But I find that you absorb the most when you're most present. So with that being said, if everybody wants to find a comfortable position, we're going to go ahead and do a 3-minute meditation. So you can find a position that feels good where your spine can be straight and tall. And then you can go ahead and close your eyes. And just begin to allow your body to feel supported by the surface underneath you. Noticing the points of contact. And just imagine a beautiful golden light completely enveloping your spine. Feeling the base of your spine extend down into the earth. Digging deep down through the grass, through the nourishing soil, through the groundwater, through the bedrock, all the way to the fiery core. And the other end extending up into the sky, into the heavens, moving through the clouds, out of the atmosphere, into space, connecting with the universal consciousness. And just feeling that flow of energy up and down your spine. And just begin to notice your breath here. Just notice if it feels shallow or deep. Does it feel fast or slow? Does it feel hard or easy? Just opening this connection to your breath. And then bringing your awareness to your shoulders, allowing your shoulders to drop down away from your ears. Letting any tension, any weight you're carrying off. Letting that go, letting it go back to the earth. And then bringing your awareness to your jaw, unclenching the muscles of your jaw, allowing it to be loose. And then bringing your awareness to the space in between your eyebrows, allowing your mind to be open and perceptive, feeling the muscles of your face become soft. And then together, we're going to go ahead and take 3 breaths. So we're going to breathe in through the nose, and then we're going to sigh it out of the mouth and exhale. So taking a nice big breath in. And sigh it out, exhale. Taking another big breath in. And sigh it out, exhale. Taking another big breath in. And sigh it out, exhale. And then before you open your eyes, just gently taking any movements that feel good in this moment. Maybe you roll your neck, stretch your arms out to the side or above overhead, or just making some space, some openness. And when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes. So I'm gonna go ahead and shut my window here because there's a lot of cars on the street and it's very, very distracting. Okay, so welcome everybody. This lecture is part of a program called Koshi Noma that Anya created. And Koshi Noma means powerful woman in the language of Shipibo, which is an indigenous tribe in Peru, who both Anya and I study plant medicine with. So it's really so cool to have everybody here tonight. I feel that we don't talk enough about women's health and our hormones and our cycles. And there's not even really that many studies on how different things in healthcare affect a woman's body. Everything is always done on a man's body. And the more we talk about that, the more we have these conversations, the more we learn, the more we shift that paradigm in both the physical world and in the energetic realm. So thank you so much again for being here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through my lecture. You know, at certain points, I might stop and ask a question or try to be a little interactive. This is my first time doing this lecture, so I'm sure it's going to grow and evolve, and I might be a little messy, so I'm apologizing in advance. And then at the end, we're going to do a Q&A. So if any like really big questions come to your mind, I encourage you to type them in a Word document or on your computer, or even actually in the messages section of this chat. And then after, we can go over everything. But yeah, we'll do like an extensive Q&A at the end where you can get all your questions answered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the 4 phases of the cycle. And first, I'm going to talk about it in like a spiritual, energetic perspective. And then I'm going to kind of flow into the science behind the hormones, how the hormones impact the body, and then how the foods that we eat impact our hormones. So it's going to be really a lot of fun. So we'll go ahead and we'll just dive right in. So I'm going to look at the cycle through 3 different lenses at first. We're going to look at it through the lens of the 4 seasons. We're going to look at it through the lens of the archetypes. And we're going to look at it through a Chinese medicine lens. Now, I am not a Chinese medicine expert by any means. We covered it very briefly in my functional nutrition training. So I just have like the bare minimum on that. I do know Chinese medicine practitioners if anyone's ever interested in learning more. But yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm not an expert. So yeah. Sweet pea. My dog is like chewing on a duck toy and it's so crinkly. Hang on. Can you like maybe chew that in the hallway? Thank you. Okay. All right. So something to know first about Chinese medicine is there's like 2 forces, the yin and the yang, right? And they're opposing, but they're also complementary, just like male and female. We're different, but we're complementary, necessary for each other's existence. So the Chinese believe that these 2 forces are the foundation of the entire universe. So yin is like the cool, nurturing, receptive kind of energy. And the yang is like that warm, active expansion energy. So the yin is more feminine and the yang is more masculine. They also believe in qi as a life force. So the vital force or energy that flows through all living things. And they believe that our blood carries that qi throughout the body. So this is really also where it's going to be relating to the menstrual cycle, because it's all about our bleed. The whole cycle is preparing for the bleed, our energy release. The Chinese also like to incorporate the elements, so wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. And that's my little overview on that. So we're gonna go through each part of the cycle one by one, but I just kind of want to give an overview. So the cycle begins at the menstruation. Day 1 of your cycle is the day that you menstruate. So that's where you're going to start tracking your cycle from. And if you don't already do this, I highly recommend, like in whatever calendar you use, even if it's on your phone, putting a note in there and like coloring it red, and like, so you know what day your period started, because, you know, we can get our period and then you're like, yeah, I'm going to remember the exact date. And then 3 weeks go by and you're like, what day am I on? What day did I get my period? And then you're like doing all this reverse engineering and you're like, I'm still not actually sure. So it's just good to just put it in the calendar and get it on there. So a menstrual cycle, a healthy menstrual flow can really last anywhere from 3 to 7 days. Any of those are completely normal. And then after the menstruation phase is the follicular phase. So that could be anywhere from days 3 to 11 or 7 to 11, depending on how long your bleed is. When you reach day 11, that's when your hormones start peaking and your body prepares for ovulation. So the ovulatory phase are days 11 through 15. And then the luteal phase, when the body is preparing for a potential pregnancy, are days 16 to bleed. So that's kind of how we're going to break it up as we talk about it. So the menstrual phase, the phase where we're bleeding. Does anybody, oh wait, I see stuff in the chat, sorry. Can you relate this as well to women who are no longer bleeding? Yes, no longer bleeding because you went through menopause or because of a health challenge or because of birth control. I don't know who asked that question, Christine. Not for me, but for menopause. Yeah, I mean, so the body is still operating in a 28-day cyclical nature, even when we're outside of menopause. Just, we don't really have much progesterone left in the body. And so some of the tools that I'm going to share with you, like, I feel like every woman should still operate in a cyclical flow. And the way you're going to be able to navigate that is just by tuning into your body, into I think using the seasons and the archetypes as examples will help you start to figure out how your flow in your cycle should be. Like, oh, I'm feeling like winter today. I'm feeling like summer today. And you can kind of start tracking that in a calendar to figure out how your cycle should go. Because, I've even seen cases where people think they don't have a period anymore, and then they start working with their cycles, and all of a sudden their period comes back, and it actually wasn't menopause yet. It was just some other underlying hormonal imbalance. So I think it's just good to make note of either way. That's a great question. We should definitely do another one at some point on going through menopause and postmenopausal women, because I don't want to go on too much of a tangent, but postmenopausal women are the shit. Their brains are like super brains, because if you think of it from an evolutionary standpoint, the role of the grandmother is to be a wise woman, and then is to support her daughter, taking care of her daughter. So how does she do that? She forages for stuff, she creates, she weaves baskets, maybe she's like a caretaker, a planner. So postmenopausal women have like brain superpowers once they get past that menopause. So it's something to look forward to. Menopause is not this like dreaded thing. It's actually like probably the best chapter of your life. Okay, so menstruation phase, winter, right? It's a time of rest and quiet and renewal in nature. And that's what makes it correspond really beautifully with this phase of the cycle. So this is when all your hormones are at their lowest level. So that may cause you to feel tired, fatigued, low energy, maybe even depressed. That's okay. And that's completely normal. And I think when we understand that that is normal, to feel a little bit down, to feel a little bit heavy, that it becomes easier to hold, because we're like, okay, there's nothing wrong with me. This is just my body moving through its cycle. And that can be really powerful on its own. So women might get some cramping or lower back pain here, maybe even headaches or digestive changes. And minor shifts are completely normal. They should be manageable. You should be able to still get your daily tasks done. If for whatever reason they're having an impact on your life where you feel like you can't exist, then that's when that's like a sign like your body really needs some help. In terms of like the emotional landscape during this phase, we have heightened introspection and we have heightened intuition. So this is a really good time to kind of feel into like, I've been sitting with this for a while. I'm not sure what move I want to make. This is a really good time to sit in that power and allow your intuition to guide you. You might have a desire for more solitude and quiet time, which I hope that everyone can honor if they feel that. And in this phase, you might even have more deep insights and clarity. So it's a really good time to get some journaling done and just like let that connection, that intuitive divine connection that's happening when you're bleeding, let it do its thing, let it work for you. Great time to really hone in on that journaling skill or habit. This is where you're going to be the lowest energy, as we said. inward focus, reflective, enhanced connection to the subconscious also. So it's a good time to do some subconscious reprogramming, maybe in the form of mantras or, any, even visualization, right? Like we could be in a hard financial situation. And then when we're in this phase, we can imagine ourselves living in an abundant financial situation, and harnessing that power during that phase is just going to make that even stronger. And then to optimize the phase, we want to prioritize rest, definitely prioritize sleep, and more gentle movements. So like nice calm walks in nature, maybe some gentle stretching, some gentle yoga. Nourishing the body with warm, digestible foods is key during this phase. As we're bleeding, we need to keep our body temperature nice and warm. So you might want to wear like thick socks on your feet. You don't really want to walk around bare feet on the cold floor. Outside is a different story, but like on tile or wood, you want to keep your feet insulated. It's even a good idea to like heat up a rice pack and sleep with that on your womb, and to really eat a lot of cooked foods during this time. Try to stay away from the cold stuff. Yeah. So winter is like a time of dormancy in nature, and it really allows for like a deep renewal beneath the surface if you think about it. So it's a really good time for us to do that as well. Now, if we're going to look at the menstrual phase in terms of an archetype, the menstrual phase, sorry, change positions, is that of the wise woman. So the wise woman, she has wisdom, she has insight, she reflects, she releases and lets go, she rests, she connects to her divine feminine energy. And again, your hormones are at the lowest point at this time, but because of that, it supports that deep intuition. So yes, you may be low energy, have low hormones, but you're also getting something really beautiful out of that. This is a great time to release what no longer serves you. Goodbye. Really important to honor our sacred yes and our sacred no. And this is a really good time to get clear about those boundaries and actually put them into place. And again, just honoring your body's need for solitude and stillness during this time. I know it can be hard in our fast-paced world to slow down, and that sometimes the physical discomfort from menstruation can be challenging, but we have tools. So, we're going to get into this a little more towards the end, but magnesium is a really good supplement to take when you're menstruating, maybe upping your dose during that period, because the uterus is a muscle. And so it's contracting to squeeze the blood, and magnesium is a muscle relaxer. So it can help with some of that cramping or pain or heaviness. The same for red raspberry leaf tea. That's something great to drink in your luteal phase and into your bleed. From a perspective of Chinese medicine, this phase is predominantly yin in nature, that feminine aspect of nature. So again, yin is that cool, nurturing, reflective type of energy. I totally lost my spot on what I was reading. Oh, there it is. So menstrual cramps from this viewpoint can be a result of qi and blood stagnation. So some stretching or some legs up on the wall might be really good there to support that. A heavy flow may indicate too much heat in the blood or a qi deficiency. So you can have things that are very soothing, like, you don't want to have anything spicy, but you want to have things that are warm. Does that make sense? And then a light flow could suggest that there's a blood or a yin deficiency. So that's something to think about also. But basically, if we're going to just wrap up that phase, we want to avoid cold foods. We don't want to push ourselves. We want to do gentle physical activity. We want to really hold strong to our boundaries, and we don't want to be wishy-washy with them, because when we do that also, that intuition, that connection that we have when we're bleeding, then we're inviting other people into that space, and we don't want their energy in our warm space. So that's ours. So I want to just pause here for a second and just open up the conversation. If anybody wants to share anything that they've noticed about their menstruation phase, if they have any small questions here, please feel free to come off mute and ask or share your experience.
Can you hear me? Hi. I think my question will be, like, since I got my very first period, I've been experiencing really, really strong cramps every first day, like to the point that I have to take ibuprofen each time, otherwise I can't function. So what could it be? How to work with that? Yeah, any comments? Thank you.
Yeah. So have you tried anything to relax the muscles, like a heating pad, magnesium, or red raspberry leaf? Have you experimented with any of those?
I do, but nothing helps like ibuprofen. So even if I do something like, you know, when I'm in the nature, I can lie down on my stomach, relax, connect with the earth. It actually does help. A heating pad helps, but it does not help to the point where I can manage it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing. And so I think that you're going to find as we go through this, right? I want you to start thinking about what am I doing in the different phases that's maybe not aligning, that's making this cleansing period be so much heavier and so much more intense. Where am I not aligned in my cycle that could be leading to this? So I want you to keep that in mind as we go on, and then we'll go back to your question at the end and kind of explore it a little bit deeper. Anybody else? Okay, great. So we're going to go on to the next phase, the follicular phase. So again, this could start anywhere between day 3 and day 7, depending on when you stop bleeding. And it will go all the way till about day 11. So the follicular phase really represents the season of spring. So just as spring brings this new growth and renewal after the quiet winter, the follicular phase marks the beginning of a new menstrual cycle, a new preparing of the body for a potential baby. So what's happening here is your estrogen is starting to rise. Your estrogen is going to be the star in this phase. And also another hormone called follicle stimulating hormone, or FSH, is going to begin to rise here. So energy levels are going to start to increase as the phase progresses. Your skin may become clearer and more radiant. You might have this sense of renewal and fresh start in you. So you might feel like super optimistic and enthusiastic, like the same way you do in spring, like, yeah, everything's turning green and the weather's getting warmer. That it's that same kind of energy. And you might notice that you start to have more of a desire to be social and to have new experiences and adventures. So I like to try to plan my most adventurous parts of my vacations, if I can, with this phase, if I have enough time to do so, or if my cycle's regular, because I feel like it really just enhances the experience for me. And I'm going to get kind of more into that too, like, you know, what to be doing at the different phases. So yeah, again, rising energy, like the gradual warmth of spring. This is a time where you're going to get really creative and new ideas are going to begin to blossom. What are you guys doing? Oh my God, it's a rodeo in here. And then it's a really good time to start a new project or set a new goal. So you're going to notice that you're starting to feel like super focused and wanting to plan. And that's because estrogen also brings along acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter that brings mental clarity and mental focus. So this is a really good time to do stuff. Hang on, let me get them out of here. Girls, out. Sweetie, Elsa, come on. Oh, yeah. All right. Oh man, it's never a dull moment in this house. Okay, so this is a time where it's really good to start planning. So maybe if this could be in any sense. It can be in terms of like a new project for the house. If you're building something, if you're creating something, if you're planning for a business, if you're planning something at work, like whatever it is, this is like the plan phase where you're going to feel the most inspiration for that. This is a really good time to start to do a little bit of heavier exercise. So estrogen is really cool because it allows our body to be more resilient and more elastic, leaving us less prone to injury. So this is a really good time to really push yourself. in the workout space, you know, maybe lift a little bit heavier, run a little bit longer, just like give it your all, push yourself beyond your comfort zone and explore that beyond your comfort zone. Whereas like later in the cycle, you don't really want to do that because you're going to hurt your hormones actually. So we're going to talk about that more, but I'm just kind of setting the stage. And I also kind of wanted to say that it's a really good time for envisioning and intention setting for the cycle ahead. Like, again, like I said, it's the planning phase. So like literally planning your whole month and your cycle out in this phase, you're gonna, the clarity you're gonna have doing it is just gonna feel so amazing. It's also a really good time to eat like nice, fresh, light foods, rich in vitamins and minerals, right? You think of spring coming and what are the foods that are traditionally available, like young shoots and young roots and baby leaves, like those are the things that really represent that season and are going to be good there. So, you know, just as a farmer would go ahead and plant a seed in the spring, it's a really good time for a woman to go ahead and plant the seed of new ideas, projects, or habits that you wish to cultivate. So yeah, that's another in the planning thing. If you're trying to accomplish a goal that's maybe not like work related or project related, but just like I want to meditate for 5 minutes every day and then eventually increase that, or I want to get stronger physically with my muscles, it's a good time to like write out those plans. The archetype for this phase, just got to pop up. The archetype is the maiden. So this youthful energy, full of enthusiasm, new beginnings, fresh starts, the whole world is your oyster, curiosity and openness to new experiences, like this independence, this self-discovery, super playful, super lighthearted. That's kind of the energy that's going on here. So the more you can bring that into your life in this phase, the more your body is going to respond positively to that. And like, you know, our minds and our hearts, we love adventure, but our physical bodies, they really like routine. They thrive best in routine. So it's like, where can we find this balance between honoring the adventure that sits in the soul and the heart, but also giving the body the routine and the stability that it needs? So like I said before, estrogen's rising, you're feeling energetic, you're optimistic, your cognitive function is on point, complex problem solving. So yeah, even if you wanted to start a new skill during this time, like, oh, I've been wanting to learn archery for a really long time. This would be a good time to go sign up for that class and get it done. This is a really good time to do that longer hike. This is a really good time to socialize and network and plan a gathering. It's also a really good time to express creativity through art, writing, or music. So the only challenge, I don't want to say the only challenge, but a challenge here could be that some women do experience anxiety about a new beginning or feel pressured to always be on and productive. So even though this is the most productive phase of the cycle, obviously each person is their own woman and you have to find what the right balance is for you and kind of dial that in. So in terms of Chinese medicine, this phase aligns with the wood element. And as we said, the season of spring, it's about growth and development and a new stirring of life. And this is where that yang, that masculine energy starts to rise. But the yin, the feminine energy, is still super dominant. It's this transitional period between the two. And so in the Chinese lens, this phase is characterized by increasing vitality and creativity, again, mirroring that renewal energy of spring. And through the Chinese lens, also, you know, they think that it's helpful to consume foods that each person is their own woman. Each woman is their own woman. I don't know. I'm glad you liked it. Consume foods that support liver function, leafy greens, and sprouts. Because as you're beginning to approach the ovulation phase, your detoxification is going to get deeper and deeper. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. So I'm going to take a pause here, open up any discussion for the follicular phase. If anybody has any questions, comments, want to share any experiences that you notice that come up for you during that phase, please feel free to hop on. Okay. KK iPhone, did you want to say something? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Just kidding. You can talk later. All right, I'm gonna keep going. Uh, I'm glad someone thinks I'm funny. Okay, so the next phase is ovulation. So ovulation is typically around days 11 through 15. Now, in the textbook menstrual cycle, women ovulate around day 14, but it can be anywhere in that phase. And so there's different ways that you're going to know if you're ovulating. And so the first sign is that towards the end of your follicular phase and into the beginning of your ovulatory phase, you're going to start secreting discharge. And so the discharge is going to start as like a more liquidy, kind of clear discharge. And then as you get closer to your ovulation day, it's going to get thicker and it's going to get stickier. And the function of that is because that liquid or that discharge is meant to basically like grab the sperm and hang on to it, making sure it doesn't like leak back out your vaginal canal. That's the function of it. So I personally think that paying attention to your ovulatory fluid and discharge is a better indicator than temperature. And so actually, you know what? I have a really good image that I think would be helpful for me to pull up. But where it is a whole different thing here. Wait, hang on one second. I have a feeling I have it right here. Oh yeah, found it. I don't know if I'll be able to share my screen, Anya. You might have to let me share my screen. Let me try first before I. Oh no, it works. Okay, cool. So here's a cute little visual that I probably should have started with, but first time. So yeah. So we'll break it down piece by piece. So this is like the graph of our hormones here. So this orange line is FSH. This is the follicle stimulating hormone. So you'll see that it dips and then it peaks at ovulation and then it stays pretty low. So yeah, I mean, really its only function is to stimulate the follicle of your fallopian tube, of your ovary, I'm sorry, to stimulate the egg. Estrogen is this red. So you can see right here is the start of the cycle. During the bleeding phase, it's low, and then it slowly starts to rise during the follicular phase till it comes to a peak. Then after ovulation, it drops down low. And then during the luteal phase, it has a smaller peak. So you don't feel estrogen as much, but it's still present in your body. Then we have the luteinizing hormone, LH. So this is the hormone that basically will go to the egg and make it available to enter the fallopian tubes. So the LH is going to be pretty stable. And then again, it peaks right during ovulation and then it comes back down. Progesterone is going to be this purple color. So you can see that progesterone is pretty much non-existent during the first half of the cycle. And then right after ovulation is when progesterone begins to rise, preparing the womb for a potential baby. So we're going to talk about progesterone and her properties and her energy too at some point. So yeah, you can see here the follicle starts developing, the follicle stimulating hormone comes in, stimulates it, it gets released. Then the luteinizing hormone reaches the egg, and then it turns into this thing called the corpus luteum, which will basically disintegrate if a sperm doesn't meet with it. And the corpus luteum, once it's released, it generally only lasts in the fallopian tube for about 24 hours. I cannot guarantee. It's always better to wait about 48 hours after you've released an egg to have unprotected sex. So just disclaimer. But then, yeah, I like this part too because it shows the uterine lining, right? It's at the highest when we're bleeding. We shed it, it's down low, and then it slowly begins to build to a peak when progesterone's at a peak. Cervical position. So I'm not going to get really too much into this, but basically when we're getting towards our ovulation phase, our cervix drops lower in our vagina. And that is an evolutionary benefit because then it can be closer to the sperm that's trying to come in. So it's important to also be careful if you're having intercourse or having any toys up there during that time, because your cervix is going to be more sensitive and it's going to be closer to the opening of your vagina. So if you do feel any pain or discomfort in that time, like when you're doing that, that's why. So just, you know, if you're with a partner or you're with yourself, like being mindful of that and honoring that. And then here we talk a little bit about the cervical fluid. So, you know, you go from your period to being dry, to being a little sticky and watery, then to being more creamy. And then when it gets to an egg white consistency, that's about when you ovulate. And then you should notice like the next day after you ovulate, no more fluid, no more discharge. That's typically what will happen. And for the most part, it will be dry, sometimes a little sticky, but it won't be that distinctive egg white kind of discharge that was happening. And then here's your temperature as well, which can be another valuable tool. But the reason I don't agree with that as a form of birth control is because your temperature peaks after you ovulate, after the egg is released. And the sperm can last in the vagina for up to 5 days. So it's like, you know, if you're just using your temperature, not a good look. You can definitely do it. It's very helpful into understanding your cycle, but for birth control purposes, I would go more by the cervical fluid or use the two combined and get data over time. So with that being said, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I can definitely send this to everybody if they want to copy, no problem at all. All right, back to my notes. Where did I put my notes? Okay, here we go. So ovulation, that's the summer phase. Everything is in abundance. We're at our peak energy. You know, it's just like everything's aligning. You feel like the world was made for you. It's a great feeling. I love my ovulation phase. Oh. So typically that's around day 11 to 15. And again, it can be variable. Big life changes, big stressful things can delay ovulation. So that's just something to note as well. So we already kind of went over the hormonal changes. Estrogen is peaking at this point. The luteinizing hormone is surging, triggering ovulation. And also we're having a slight rise in testosterone at this time, which is cool because we're really strong in this phase. So yeah, we've got peak physical energy and stamina. We have increased libido. Often we have this like glowing skin and shine to our hair. Like, and if you think about that evolutionary, it's like, yeah, we want to look our absolute best during this phase. Our bodies do because they want to attract a mate and you know, reproduce. Also, some women may experience mild ovulation pain. And then if it is severe, that is definitely something to look into a little bit deeper. You know, there could be some PCOS, endometriosis, other hormonal imbalances. So that's something, if you do have a lot of pain around that time, that it's really uncomfortable, that's something you definitely want to go a little bit deeper with, you know, maybe work with the functional medicine gynecologist or something like that, get some testing done just to be sure. During this time, in terms of emotions, you're going to feel super confident and have self-esteem. You're going to like have this magnetic, radiant presence. You're going to have a peak in communication skills and verbal fluency. So if you know, need to have a hard conversation with somebody, this is probably a really good time to do that. If you want to ask for a raise or something, this is probably a really good time to do that. Anything where you're like asking for something or wanting something, this is a really good phase to make that known to the external world, not just like visualize it like in the follicular phase, not just plan for it, but actually put those plans into action. You might also feel like you have a really outward focused energy, again, being really social. This is a really good time. Like I love when I have something that's like a huge social event and I'm like, oh, I'm going to be ovulating around that time. Thank God. Because I tend to be an introvert. So it's really exciting for me when something I don't want to do, quote unquote, or like, you know, is not my general cup of tea, but I need to be there, falls in my ovulation phase. It's like such a gift. It's also a really good time where you're going to be feeling in your flow and at your peak. And a reason for this is because the ovulation phase is very special because both of our right brain and our left brain hemispheres are connected. This is the only time during our cycle that these hemispheres are working together so that like, you know, that left brain logical oriented is connected to that right brain, artistic, what's the word I'm looking for? Abstract. So one of my mentors always jokes, she's like, if there's ever a problem in the world, put a bunch of ovulating women in a room together and they will figure that shit out in 10 minutes and it will be the best idea ever. And when those two hemispheres are connected and working together, that's also what happens to the brain. About 6 years after your last period, your brain reaches that stage and stays there. It stays in that connectedness. So really cool about the postmenopausal journey in terms of your brain and your brain function. Yeah, so again, this is a good time to schedule important meetings and presentations. You can engage in really high intensity workout here because your estrogen is high, giving you that elasticity, but your testosterone is high, giving you that extra strength, that extra stamina. It's a really good time to nurture relationships and social connections. So getting everyone together, that's a good day to make all your check-in phone calls, a good time frame. And it's a really good time to express yourself creativity. Oh my God, I can't speak. Creatively or artistically because of that double brain connection, that double hemisphere connection. So again, when you think about ovulation, I want you to think about like the abundant fruits of summer, like being ripe with potential, productivity, connection, and putting yourself out there, putting yourself out into the physical world. So the archetype for this is like the mother archetype. So she's got this like nurturing and caring energy that she shares with her family and those around her. She's full of abundance and giving. She's fertile. She's creating. She has unconditional love. She protects. She supports. That's the kind of energy that comes along with the ovulation phase. So yeah, this like beautiful peak of all the hormones, it gives you superpowers. It really does. And some harnessing of the mother energy, we can also engage in caretaker activities for yourself and for others. We can focus on collaborative projects and teamwork. We can express love and affection openly and freely. We can create through art and cooking or other mediums, gardening, and we can nurture ideas and relationships. So it's a really beautiful time. A challenge of the mother phase may be some women feel overwhelmed by the urge to care for others or may struggle with boundaries during this highly giving phase. So it's a good time to go back to your journal and review your boundaries from when you were in that winter phase and make sure that you're still respecting those in the most loving way possible. In terms of Chinese medicine, I also just want to say, again, it's a really good time for connection and just tapping into that power of creation and cultivating love and compassion. From a Chinese medicine perspective, it's the fire element, the fire of ovulation and the height of summer. And it represents the peak of that yang, more masculine energy, which makes sense because that's when our testosterone is the highest. So the yang reaches its peak. And then right after this, there's going to be a transition back into the yin. But yeah, that yang is fun to play around with. So again, the Chinese view this as peak energy, confidence, and outward expression. So again, engaging in more vigorous exercise. You can also consume more cooling foods here to balance the strong yang energy, like yogurt, cucumbers, celery juice, smoothies, nice juicy fruits. Those are great things to have here, and participate in social activities and express yourself. So I'll just do a little pause here. Does anybody want to share anything about their ovulation phase or ask any questions?
I just have a question, Allison. Hi. Ovarian cysts bursting, is this during this phase usually, or is it any time that you can have an ovarian cyst burst? Or is it mostly ovarian?
That's a great question. Ovarian cysts tend to actually form during the ovulation phase and then burst right after in the early luteal on their own, unless, there's some kind of like pressure on it or like you did something where, it would burst. But generally, it's relatively normal to get small little cysts on your ovaries during this phase and have them burst. Now, like size and abundance of that matters too, right? Like small little ones, pretty normal, but anything that's big or excessive, you're going to want to look at that through a deeper lens. And A big part of that is managing your blood sugar with your hormones, which we're going to get into at the end, and you're going to learn a little bit more about that. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, cool.
I have another question. I don't know what you can offer for the information, but something that I don't know much about, and maybe you know more. Endometriosis and cysts, actually. Like, yeah, what are those conditions and how to work with them through food, nutrition, holistic lifestyle, etc.
Yeah. So cysts can show up in many different ways. You know, they can show up as polyps, they can show up as fibroids, which are calcium build up. So it's important to figure out which one of those you have. And we can do that through looking at your symptoms and then and your health history. And then endometriosis is basically when the inside of like the uterine tissue inside starts growing in other places throughout the body. And the way I think of that is like it all comes back down to balancing the hormones because the body gets confused. The only reason that the body would be growing uterine tissue outside of the uterus is because it's getting the wrong signal. It's getting the wrong chemical message. I mean, and same with the cysts and the fibroids. Usually a lot of times I associate it or I see it in my practice with estrogen dominance, meaning there's too much estrogen in the body, and that can create those cysts and those fibroids and the inflammatory buildup. And it's really sad because what's happening in terms of estrogen dominance is there's a lot of xenoestrogens, which means estrogens outside of the body. And those are found in certain pesticides and plastics, even in things that are like made of polypropyl ethylene. Like if you're buying a carpet, if you're buying a mattress, like curtains, couches, all these things contain plastics that have xenoestrogens in, and we're laying on the carpet, we're laying on the mattress, we're breathing this stuff in all day. So making sure the detox pathways are like nice and open is really important here, like lymphatic flow. And speaking of fibroids, I see someone in the chat said that you have fibroids. We're going to get to that, how to manage it with nutrition. We're going to get to the nutrition part later on, but also another really good tool is castor oil. Using castor oil topically. Castor oil can penetrate at least 4 inches deep below the skin and start breaking up fibroids, which are just calcium buildups. I used castor oil as part of my regimen to get rid of these fibroids that I had on my cervix, and I can kind of get into a little bit about what I did and how I got rid of them. You know, for every woman, it's going to be a different kind of protocol, a different approach. In some ways, like there's going to be some core similarities. I think following the different foods to eat and the glucose levels, which we're going to get into, but ultimately everyone has a different health history and different life experiences that's going to determine how much their body can handle in any kind of like scenario where you're trying to get rid of fibroids, right? Like, let's just take fasting, for example. Fasting is a really great tool for your hormones as a female, done in the right times of the cycle, which we're going to talk about. But for others, if they have like adrenal fatigue, let's say, it could be really devastating. So it's always going to be person dependent. So I know that doesn't really give you a full answer. It's kind of hard to give like direct, like if you have fibroids, you need to do this, this, and this. But I think the lecture that I'm giving here is a really great place to start balancing your hormones and then see what kind of other things are still persisting. So in like the body, right? I think of like it as a river. Everything's always moving, things are shifting, and sometimes the water can be really muddy and it can be hard to see what's really going on. So a good first step is always like to clear the muddy waters through like removing things that are inflammatory to you and balancing your hormones through this cycle flow and following these energies is going to help really kind of clear up anything else that might be going on that might be causing confusion in the body. So I hope that answers your question for now. And like I said, we're going to get more into it in about 10 minutes. Did you have another question, Anya? Oh, okay, cool. So yeah, I'm going to go through the luteal phase in the same way, and then we're going to get into the science and the nutrition. So the luteal phase is the fall, the autumn that we are about to enter right now. So as fall brings a shift towards introspection and preparation for the winter, the luteal phase is marking that turning inward towards the menstrual cycle. So the body's preparing to either build up the lining with the baby or to shed it. But it always starts by preparing first. So again, this is days about 16 to bleed. And I do kind of like to break the luteal phase down into the early luteal and the late luteal when it comes to science and nutrition. But from a spiritual, energetic perspective, we're just going to focus on the whole phase. So this is when, as we saw in the chart, progesterone rises and becomes dominant, and estrogen has that second smaller peak. So right after ovulation is when all the hormones drop, and then they start kind of doing that curve, that bell curve again. So physical experiences during this phase is your body temperature becomes a little bit hotter. So this is why also people might experience like hot flashes during this time, possible breast tenderness. Breast tenderness is completely normal as long as it's not painful. This is where you can potentially bloat and have water retention, also normal in small amounts, nothing extreme. And your skin may become more prone to breakouts because estrogen is lower. And also you're getting prepared to release. And when you break out, like you're releasing from your skin. It's like a really heavy detoxification phase. So totally normal. So the emotional landscape, this is where you start to get more introspective and reflective. You notice that shift in your being, like, skip that event tonight, and maybe I'm just going to hang out on the couch and watch a movie. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. You pick up the phone and you're like, you don't want to upset the person. My dog's stay home. You're like starting to make excuses to stay home. So it's best not to plan any or not give like a definite to any huge events during that phase. Be like, yeah, it's likely, like I'll get back to you. That way, like you're not like super committed, you have some flexibility. And this is when your intuition and your sensitivity starts heightening. So you may find that something that you didn't even blink an eye at in your follicular phase, all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, that's so sad or so cute. Also completely normal. So like just love yourself through that. Love the shit out of yourself through that. Embrace the sensitivity. Just embrace it all. As long as you can channel it in a way that feels good for you, right? Like it doesn't feel good to have like anger or like, be snappy or irritable, but it does feel good to be deeper connected to all the emotions, like deep love, deep sadness, deep grief, deep joy. It's a spectrum. You can't experience that high without experiencing the low. And as a woman, we really get to experience the depths of both of those, which is why we're the best gender. So yeah, like I said, you can experience potential mood swings here. Shifts in mood are completely normal. Anything extreme is probably a sign of some hormonal imbalance going on, that maybe you're not producing enough progesterone. We're going to talk about the science part of that in a minute. You're going to feel a gradual decrease towards your outward energy. You're going to need you're going to have an increased capacity for more detailed, focused work. So this would be a good time to maybe go through your books and your expenses and do kind of like meticulous things like that, as opposed to like this big like planning and vision phase. Your nesting instincts will become stronger. This is a good time to focus on completing the projects you've already started, not planning new ones. Engaging in self-care is always a good routine, but this is like if you're going to schedule a massage, you should probably do it during this phase. Or if you're going to schedule something like that, it's best to do it during this phase. You definitely want to be consistent with your stress reducing and mindfulness techniques to support progesterone, which we'll also talk about. And this is a really good phase to get more grounded, do more grounding, whatever that looks like for you. It could look like getting outside, laying outside, just giving yourself quiet time with no disturbances, eating more grounding foods. And just like the fall prepares, like animals are preparing for the winter and the fall, this is a really good idea to prepare for your winter by wrapping up projects, turning inward, and preparing for that phase of reflection. So the archetype for this is the enchantress. So what are the characteristics of that? Intuition and psychic abilities, transformation and change, truth telling, boundary setting, sensuality, magnetism, intensity, passion, all these things kind of like weave together so beautifully during this phase. So yeah, this is a time also that women will experience PMS, premenstrual syndrome, because of that smaller estrogen peak. And again, this is a good time to start getting really clear about your truth, because that big like phase of cleansing and boundary setting is coming. It's a good idea to start tapping into your intuition for problem solving and decision making. It's a really good time to channel those intense emotions into creative or physical outlets. So in terms of physical activity, this is a great phase to still work out, but not as intense. So like if you were going to lift weights, it'd probably be a good time for less weight, more reps, and slower, more mindful, more intentional. It's a great time for yoga. It's a great time for Pilates. It's a great time for those slower paced things, whereas like the follicular and ovulation phases are better for like long, hard runs and HIIT workouts and heavy weightlifting and, you know, boxing, whatever. So yeah, this is when we're also going to need to start honoring that yes and no calendar, starting to get more strict with that and practicing our self-care and prioritizing our needs. So like I said, this phase can bring mood swings, irritability, and physical discomfort. And some women may definitely struggle with the intensity of their emotions or feel misunderstood. So this is also a really good time to like connect with a trusting friend who lifts your spirits. It's again a good time to indulge in that self-care, like a massage, do some breath work, do some meditation, whatever outlets it is that you use to channel your emotions. It's good to be regular with those. It's a powerful time for inner work, for shadow integration, and for speaking your truth. So it's an opportunity, I think, to really start to confront and transform aspects of yourself, and let go of everything that doesn't serve you, or be prepared to let that go in the winter phase. And when we relate this to Chinese medicine, it relates to the earth. It's a time of nourishment and preparation. So that yang energy, that male energy begins to decline and yin starts rising again, preparing for the next phase of the cycle. So PMS in this lens can often be seen as a result of liver qi stagnation or disharmony between the liver and the spleen. Breast tenderness may also indicate liver qi stagnation in this lens. And mood swings can suggest an imbalance between the heart and the liver. So it's another interesting view to look at when you start relating the organs to emotions. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in the nutrition section. But yeah, some recommendations are focusing on grounding activities. We're going to talk about what foods to consume, practicing self-care, stress reduction techniques, and just kind of starting to lay low and honoring that. So does anybody have any questions on this phase or comments?
Sorry, did I miss it? Or did you say what foods are recommended for this phase?
Yeah, going down now. I briefly touched on it and said grounding foods, but I didn't go into detail. Thought I heard my dog chewing on something weird. All right, so now we're going to get into the science of it. So days right at the beginning when you're bleeding, hormones at an all-time low. In this follicular phase, estrogen's rising, collagen production, young and supple skin. Bones and ligaments are more elastic, so you're less prone to injury. You have a great mood, you have clear thought, you can communicate, you're optimistic. Estrogen is a precursor to serotonin and dopamine to help keep you calm, happy, and satisfied. Estrogen also calms the fear center of your brain, giving you emotional resiliency. So when you think about the lifestyle things that I said, like, oh, this is a good time to plan, to communicate, to ask for that raise, to give that presentation. That's why, because that estrogen is there supporting you, calming your fears, bringing in the dopamine and bringing in the serotonin, which is really powerful. Now, something I'll say before I get into the food details is estrogen likes low blood sugar and low insulin. She is very sensitive to glucose and insulin. So if your glucose and insulin is spiking in this phase, estrogen is going to run away and hide. She wants nothing to do with that. She likes low blood sugar. So with that being said, you know, you want to focus your diet more on lean meat if you eat meat. If not, you know, you want to do some nice, good plant-based sources of protein that are not, I mean, no good sources of protein are really high in sugar, but yeah, you want to incorporate more protein in this phase, more protein and more fat and less sugar. And what I mean by sugar is like, even like in the fruits, right? Some fruits have a higher glycemic index than others. So things that are like more tart and sour, like blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, apples, right? Those are going to be lower on the glycemic index. Those are great to have during your follicular phase and even your menstrual phase. Menstrual and follicular phase, low blood sugar, because that's when estrogen is trying to build herself up. So things like pineapple, mango, melons might not be the best things to consume during this phase to keep your blood sugar the way estrogen likes it. And like, now that I've told you this, like you will notice that you feel off when you consume a lot of sugar in the form of fruits or sugar or whatever it is during this phase. This is a really good time to practice some intermittent fasting if that feels something that's emotionally and physically available to you because of that low sugar and that low blood glucose. And I'm going to talk about that more. I'm just kind of doing like a little recap and introduction into foods. So in the ovulation phase, again, estrogen and testosterone are like the main players. Progesterone is getting high here, but she doesn't have as much as an influence. So you know, you're experiencing those physical and mental benefits of estrogen continuing to build, and then the testosterone making you feel powerful and strong, giving you that motivation, that drive. And this is a really good time to muscle build. So the testosterone is really going to help us build muscle, and muscle is so important for us as women, especially as we start to age and we start to lose that bone mass. That muscle is going to keep our bone mass on, and the more muscle we have, the more regulated our estrogen levels are actually. So bone health, muscle mass, and estrogen levels are all related in this like circle, triangle, whatever shape. And then, you know, in the luteal, this is where I'm going to break it down into early and late luteal. So in the early luteal, all your hormones are dipping right after you ovulate. So you kind of have that feeling like the first day of your bleed, like you're kind of tired. You're just like, am I depressed or is this my hormones? Because you just came from that like crazy high of ovulation. And now all of a sudden you're just like, so be gentle with yourself during that time. It's okay. All your hormones just dropped. Give yourself some space. Don't try to do it all. You know what I mean? So it's normal to have like a dip in energy and mental clarity there. And then the late luteal is considered days 19 to bleed. So early luteal is days 16, 17, 18, maybe sometimes even 19, depending on your cycle. And then the late luteal is days 20 to bleed. So in the late luteal is when our progesterone starts peaking. So progesterone, she's calming. She's like, mother, everything is going to be okay. When progesterone is in the right balance, you should be less aggressive and less irritable. So if during this phase, you're getting more aggressive and more irritable, you have a progesterone deficiency. Progesterone's job is to prepare the uterine lining for an egg. So that peak hits about 6 to 8 days after ovulation, that progesterone peak. Progesterone's arch nemesis is stress. Any kind of stress, progesterone is going to run away and lay in her bed and pull up her covers and not want to talk to anybody. So that's why also when we think of it in the energetic realm, boundaries, setting those boundaries, spending more time at home, being more reflective, right? We don't want to expose ourselves to really stressful outside energies that are going to tank our progesterone and leave us feeling fatigued and anxious. So along with progesterone's like best friend that follows her around everywhere is a neurotransmitter called GABA. GABA is like this anti-anxiety calming neurotransmitter that can also help you sleep. So if your progesterone is imbalanced, you may experience high anxiety during this phase. You may also have sleep problems, like maybe you're tossing and turning all night. Maybe you can't fall asleep. Maybe you wake up and you feel unrefreshed. Those are all signs that your progesterone is out of balance. And that could be because one, you're not producing enough progesterone because you're stressed or you're sorry, I'm gonna backtrack for a second. So as I said before, estrogen likes low blood sugar, progesterone likes higher blood sugar. She loves those high glycemic fruits, those melons, those pineapple, that mango. She loves that sweet potato, that squash, that regular potato, that white rice, that starchy, sweet, sticky goodness. Progesterone thrives off that. That's what she needs. If your glucose drops too low during that luteal phase, she's going to run away under the covers and hide in her bed, and you're going to feel anxious, depressed, and you're not going to sleep well. So I forgot what exactly I was saying before, but you can kind of see how they're opposite energies. They're opposite energies. So I like to tell people who are like in the fasting world, don't fast from days 20 to bleed, because it may feel good one cycle. It may even feel good the second and third cycle, but at some point, you're going to start disrupting your hormones on a deeper scale if you continue to do that. Because fasting, intermittent or not, even if you're going 15 hours without eating, right? I know some of us do that. We go 15 hours without eating. Maybe we don't eat till 12 or 1 the next day, and that's just like our schedule. Doing that over a long period of time in that luteal phase is going to tank our progesterone in the long run. Oh, I think what I was saying before is that some of the reasons we might be low in progesterone. Yeah, that's what I was saying. So, it could be from high stress. It could be from low glucose. So it could be literally a deficiency in the progesterone, or it could be that there's so much estrogen that progesterone is not able to make her peak in the way she should from those xenoestrogens or external estrogens. And something else to note there too is if you're not pooping at least once a day and they're like nice, like solid, good poops, you're probably reabsorbing all the excess estrogen your body's been trying to detox. And so that could be another reason. There's like a lot of layers to it. In this Q&A, I'm really just kind of scratching the surface and giving you ideas and, giving you this toolkit to start working with your hormones. Let's see. So like I said, progesterone does not like cortisol. She does not like the stress hormone. So what is the opposite of that? Oxytocin. Oxytocin is the love hormone. So this is a good time again to, not be super social, because that might be like too much for you, but to connect with like a deeper friendships. Like, have your girlfriend over for like whatever special night it is you guys do. Maybe you color in coloring books. Maybe you have a glass of wine. I don't know, whatever it is that you do for that like deeper intimacy, not just like that social butterfly kind of behavior. That's going to rise your oxytocin levels. That's going to decrease your cortisol. That's going to keep your progesterone steady. So again, really good time for self-care practices, massage, yoga, breath work, meditation. If going to get your nails done makes you feel loved and special, then that's self-care, so anything you can do that's going to bring up that love hormone is going to be really good during that phase. So going a little bit deeper into each of the phases, right? So estrogen, not only does she like low blood sugar, but she loves good fats, especially those that are high and naturally high in cholesterol. So like meat, dairy, eggs, those are really good foods to actually have during this phase. If you eat those, if you don't, coconut is a really good, coconut and cacao are good sources of plant-based cholesterol and saturated fat. You need the good cholesterol, HDL. You need that to make estrogen. That is a non-negotiable. So I'll tell you a little story about me. When I was going through my chronic illness, my cholesterol was actually chronically low. And that was one of the underlying root causes of my hormonal issues and ultimately my fibroids. And so, with that, I had to work a lot with my liver and my gallbladder and my digestive juices and take bile and make sure I'm absorbing the fat and include more fat and whatever. I could go on a tangent. But, this is how we think in the functional nutrition world. We reverse engineer whatever's going on in this way. Estrogen also actually loves foods that are phytoestrogens. So these are foods that mimic estrogen in the body, and they bind to the estrogen receptor sites, and your body treats them as if they are estrogen. So there is a difference between phytoestrogens and xenoestrogens. Phytoestrogens are external estrogens that come from foods that are healing for you in this phase of the cycle. Xenoestrogens come from chemicals and pesticides that are damaging for your estrogen. So in this phase is actually a good time to cycle small amounts of like soy and flaxseed during this time, because it can help increase the production of our protective estrogen. Our body makes many different types of estrogens, but the main one is called estradiol, and I don't have time to do like a full estrogen breakdown, but I did want you to know that. So some good fats to include during this phase are olive oil, flaxseed oil, sesame seed oil, and avocados. Thinking in the seeds and nuts realm, it's a great time for Brazil nuts, almonds, cashews, pine nuts, pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, walnuts, and sesame seeds. For legumes, it's a great time for peas, chickpeas, soybeans, lima beans, carob, kidney beans, mung beans, pinto, black-eyed peas, and lentils. And then in the fruits and vegetable section, this is a great time for blueberries, cranberries, strawberries, raspberries, blackberries. Also sprouts, cabbage, spinach, onion, garlic, zucchini, broccoli, cauliflower. And I'm going to make a cute little table for you ladies that showed up to the live call. It's going to be your little special treat that's going to kind of outline all of this for you. So yeah, those are all really good estrogen building foods. So if you can put those all on your shopping list when you know you're going into that time, and really incorporate those. Plus, you know, if you eat meat and dairy and eggs, fantastic time to eat those also because of the cholesterol content. And then coconut as well. So let's see. So then I lost my place on my little notes thing. Hang on here. Okay. So then in the ovulation phase, because testosterone and progesterone are also rising with estrogen, it's like the most different of all the phases. So you can still fast. I wouldn't fast for more than like 15-ish hours if you're going to be in the fasting realm, because detoxification is at like an all-time high during this phase. So it can actually make you feel a little sick. So that's something to kind of play around with. But also, because progesterone is still present, you know, you can fast because the estrogen is still high, but the progesterone is still there. So you don't want to take it too far. You want to find a balance. So what I'm really trying to say is, like, it wouldn't be a good idea to do a 3-day water fast during your ovulation. If you do it once or twice, it's not going to kill you. But if you're consistently doing that, not the right time. So during that time, you can start to incorporate more glucose-rich foods to support that progesterone. So like I said, it's a weird time. You can fast, but not too long. You can have some carbs, but not too much, right? I wouldn't eat like any crazy like cookies or cakes. Like, that's not the type of sugar I'm talking about. I would incorporate some more complex carbohydrates, like, you know, the white rice and the sweet potato and the butternut squash. I'm trying to think what else is, yeah, and like the tropical fruits, like a super ripe banana, maybe a banana pudding, like things like that would be really great during this phase. But you still want to get an ample amount of protein because you're testosterone building. And a little side note on protein, you know, people say you need to eat as many grams of protein as your body weight. That is absolute insanity and absolutely not true unless you're like a fucking crazy all-star bodybuilder, then maybe it's true. But anywhere from 25 to 30 grams is a good amount to have per meal, or any, you know, about that. I'm like confusing myself. If you're only having 2 meals a day, then 60 grams of protein is fine. It's totally fine. Don't stress. But I think fat, fiber, protein, thinking about your meals, like, do I have a fat in this? Do I have a fiber? Do I have a protein? Is like a foundational base. And then you can kind of add on to that and build on that. All right, let's see, moving to the luteal phase. So this is like, in terms of eating, this is where the early luteal and the late luteal become so important. Because in that early luteal, like we said, all the hormones are at an all-time low, and it's kind of like how it is when you're menstruating. when you're menstruating, you're pretty much following the same rules as the follicular phase in terms of eating and the estrogen rising, low blood glucose. You can do more fasting, your body can handle more stress. Day 1, day 2 of your bleed, yeah, go ahead, have the brownie, have the chocolate cookie. But around day 3, you should start being like, all right, I need to keep my blood glucose low to make my estrogen happy. So when you get to that early luteal and all the hormones are dropped, that's another time that you want to have low insulin, low glucose to support your estrogen production. Then around day 20 is when you want to start increasing your glucose levels again. So eating those rich, delicious squashes and potatoes and starches and, beets and sweet, sugary vegetables and fruits. Like I said, progesterone needs higher glucose in order to form. So even if you get your blood drawn during this time, your glucose will be generally higher. Like, let's say you go to the doctor and get your blood glucose drawn and it's like 10 points high over the normal or whatever it is. And your doctor flags it, note at what phase of your cycle you're in and try to get tested again in the follicular phase. Or you can even get a glucose monitor if that's something that interests you. If you really do want to get your hormones under control, I really suggest getting a glucose monitor. I have a recommendation in a book on my shelf up there. I forget the name brand of it. I used to use it a while ago. But that would be, I think, like the first step if you're entering the physical realm. Yeah, it's really good to know about the glucose. Because imagine you're going to get your blood drawn and you're always in your luteal phase and you're like, oh my God, I have high blood sugar. So okay, let's see. Blood sugar will naturally elevate. So some really good foods to have during your late luteal phase are, and this applies to your ovulation phase too. White potatoes, red potatoes, sweet potatoes, yams, beets, turnips, fennel, pumpkin, butternut squash, acorn squash, honey nut squash, and spaghetti squash. Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, broccoli, bananas, mangoes, papayas, oranges, grapefruits, lemons, limes, sunflower, flax, sesame, chickpea, kidney beans, black beans. Those are all progesterone building foods. And like I said, I'm going to make this little chart for you. And then some other things to note, always important to be adequately hydrated. Don't let yourself get too hydrated. Your cellular function is going to tank. Hormonal transport is not going to be as easy, right? Like it's easy if you're in a pool, right? It's going to be easier to swim in like clear water than like mucky water filled with seaweed. So drink water. It's going to be good for your detox. High fiber foods are going to be important throughout the entire cycle to support estrogen metabolism and gut health. Our gut plays a really crucial role in metabolizing estrogen. And omega-3 foods, fatty fish, chia seeds, hemp seeds, flax seeds, and other healthy fats, avocados and olive oil are so important for women. We have this like image of women, I think, that they should have like a flat belly and no body fat, but depending on your body type, some women are just naturally like that. We're supposed to have a little fat around the middle. We're supposed to have some fat on our butt and our thighs. Like that's actually really healthy for us. So don't be afraid of fat, please. Like I go through. And so, yeah, like doing a little bit of a deeper dive, right? You're menstruating. Let's think about consuming some iron-rich foods to replenish all the blood that you're losing. Red meat, spinach, lentils, those are really good iron-rich foods. Chocolate, cacao, yeah, so rich in iron. Anti-inflammatory foods during the menstrual phase to help with oxidative stress and cramping are going to be berries, fatty fish, and turmeric to help reduce inflammation and again ease that cramping. Warm, comforting foods like soups and stews to support the body's need for comfort and warmth. A review of the follicular phase, that's also a really good time to eat a lot of fermented foods. So kimchi, sauerkraut, kefir, yogurt to support that gut health and estrogen metabolism. Zinc-rich foods will be really good in the follicular phase. Pumpkin seeds, chickpeas to support follicle development and the health of your eggs. Antioxidant-rich foods are always going to be good here to support cellular health during this proliferative phase. So, you're thinking berries, leafy greens, colorful things that aren't too high in glucose. And then you get to your ovulation phase, right? And you want to support your estrogen metabolism a lot here. I talked about how the detox is at the highest, the way all the hormones are interacting. So broccoli and cauliflower actually really support the methylation and sulfation pathways of the liver. So quick side note, the liver has 6 different pathways, and the sulfation and the methylation pathways both do a lot of, or like the majority of, the sex hormone detoxing. And broccoli and cauliflower and bok choy and cabbage and Brussels sprouts can really support that pathway. Lean proteins can be really good here as well. Chicken and fish, if you eat meat, because of that testosterone rise to support that. And then foods that are really rich in glutathione can be really good here. So if you can tolerate like a grass-fed organic whey protein, that's a really good source of glutathione. For those of you who don't know, glutathione is like the master antioxidant. So it's going to do a lot of the cleanup during this heavy detox phase. Asparagus, avocado are going to help support that detox as well. And then again, getting into the luteal in the early luteal, days 16 to 19-ish, depending on your cycle, you're going to eat more like you're in your follicular phase. Then as soon as you hit around that day 20 mark, you're going to make that shift to that more carbohydrate rich phase. So you don't need as much protein in this phase. Maybe 20 grams a meal is totally fine because your body is more oriented to work with carbohydrates at this time. So sweet potatoes, quinoa, squashes, those are all going to support serotonin production and mood stability. Cherries are so good here because they contain tryptophan, which is a precursor to serotonin, and melatonin for good sleep. When, like we were saying, this could be a time where your sleep could be impacted because if your progesterone's out of balance for whatever reason. Magnesium rich foods are really good here to get the muscles prepared for that contraction. So dark chocolate, almonds, nuts and seeds that will help reduce PMS symptoms like tightness and cramping and support sleep. And then B vitamin rich foods are going to again support energy levels, which are a little bit depleted in this phase, and detoxification and mood regulation. So those can be like eggs, leafy greens, and seeds and seed grains like quinoa, buckwheat, amaranth, millet, rice. Those are like pretty B vitamin rich. Let's think, what else? Yeah, so I think that is a really good introduction. It's a lot of information to take in. So I suggest everybody, kind of re-listen to this at another time, let it all settle. And then, if you have a drive somewhere, you're cooking a meal, maybe just throw it on. And I think with repetition, like it tends to stick more. But yeah, so some really good things to like incorporate into your life, or tracking your cycle. What was funny for me is I was getting my hearing checked, and they had these like little mini calendars at the desk, and so I took one, and I was like, oh, this is my little cycle tracking calendar, and that felt super helpful to me. That you can do it digitally. There's apps. Starting to notice planning of your month around the flow of your cycle, adapting your exercise routine if you have one to the phases, to the seasons, adjusting your nutrition to the phases, to the seasons. Really, I think the biggest focus to start with is going to be that high glucose versus that low glucose, and kind of leaning into the flow with that. Again, honoring your yes and no's and where you're at socially during the phases. Not forcing yourself to do anything you don't want to do in the luteal and menstruation phase, like not just sucking it up and bearing it, but actually, so I'm using chat. That's funny. Sorry, I was reading the chat, what Anya said. So yeah, like really, really dialing in those practices. There's always going to be individual variations, we're all, what did I say before? Each person is their own woman. So that's going to be really present. Women on birth control or using hormonal contraceptives may not experience the same hormonal fluctuations, and might need to connect with their internal seasons in a different way, which honestly, I don't know much about. I've never really been on birth control. Conditions like PCOS, endometriosis, infertility, fibroids, and irregular cycles can all be resolved through following protocols like this, especially with the glucose, like monitoring the glucose between the phases, like that is like key to all those issues. You know, modern life challenges always encourage constant productivity. They have us on a man's hormonal cycle. They have us in a man's hormonal energy, like starting to perform as that. And we're just not built that way. So, you know, the journey might not be easy. You might have to say no to people you don't want to say no to. You might have to set boundaries, and that's going to feel really hard. You might have to be more intentional with everything you do, but you know what? It's totally worth your happiness. So yeah, I think starting here is just going to improve your understanding and your relationship with your cycle and with yourself. So that's my spiel, and I would love to open it up to questions. And I just want to note also here that like the more personal, complex questions we have, I'm not going to really spend time on here, but I do offer free 20-minute consultations for people who are maybe looking to get more information or learn how to work with a functional nutritionist. And so we can definitely set something up and go more into detail about, you know, your specific thing, because I will have to ask you deeper questions. And I don't want to take up everybody's time with that, but let's do like a general Q&A.
I think I just really want to thank you so much for such an informative lecture. I learned a lot, and I definitely will need to rewatch this. But I already can say that I learned so much. And then what I wrote in the chat, that actually about a month ago, I started using ChatGPT as my daily tracker. You can set up a topic there, and ChatGPT learns about you more and more. So basically every single day I created like these different things about my moods, activities, how I feel, also what day of the cycle, which phase of the menstrual cycle I'm in. And then I added even the moon phase, because I figured that I want to see the moon phase. And I think that like in 3-4 months, I'll try to see the patterns, if they're there or not. Something, yeah, and it's free. You don't need to pay. As for an app, yeah, maybe somebody else wants to try it. And thank you so much, Allison. And you look so beautiful.
I had no idea ChatGPT could do that. That's pretty insane. I'll definitely be trying that. I'm kind of like low-key obsessed with ChatGPT. I find it so interesting. Sometimes I curse it out just to see what it will do. But yeah. Anyway, anybody else have a question or want to share anything?
Yeah, I want to say as well that thank you so much for your lesson. There are a lot of information. I need to analyze all of that, and maybe then I will be ready to ask you some questions. I can't ask you right now. I'm not ready because it's so. I don't know how to say it in English. Личное. It's so. Can you?
Personal.
Personal. Exactly. Yeah. It's so personal. So I will really appreciate if I can ask you some questions after that, like in DM maybe.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'm blurry now, but thank you so much as well. I don't know what's happening with my camera. Oh, there we go. The blood sugar thing I think is really helpful with the cycles, because I've probably heard it, but I hadn't associated it. So if you remember, if you could link the book in our group that you were talking about, that'd be great.
Definitely. Yeah. Absolutely.
But thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome. So if there's no other questions, I just want to say thank you. You have a question, Anya?
No, I just wanted to say that I hope the recording is happening, because it stopped in the middle, but it seems like it's on track again. And I will post this recording for everyone who wants to rewatch this video. And maybe if there are some additional questions, people can ask them in the chat. if there are certain, and you can maybe answer them with the voice messages in the Telegram chat that we have.
Totally.
Yeah, because it is a lot of information, and even for me, I'm like, whoa, where to go, what to do. But it's amazing. Thank you again.
You're welcome. So
Thank
yeah, I
you
also
so
just,
much, Allison. Thank you so much
oh,
for
you're
all the
welcome.
information.
You're so welcome. Thank you for coming and listening and learning and being open. Yeah, I also just wanted to say, like, this is just a little sneak peek into what goes on in Anya's program, Koshi Noma. Like, we get deep, we get real, transformation happens, there's support, there's community. So, you know, we're finishing up our first round now, but we will be launching another one. So if, you know, this call is something that really impacted you, maybe in the future, the program will call to you. Or, you know, if there's any women in your life that you feel like would really benefit from this recording, you know, feel free to send it.
Thank you, Allison. And I love this community for the women's support, how we're just gathering. This is the first time when we're doing it, and we're already having such beautiful results. So I'm looking forward to see what it's going to evolve into. And I'm very happy to do it with all of you. So if there are no more questions, again, I guess we can finish for today. Feeling good about it. Thank you so much, Allison. We honor you. We honor your knowledge, your skill, how much time you dedicate to really work on everything that you're sharing with people right now. And again, everyone, as Allison said, she is kindly offering 20-minute free consultations. So if you want to just learn a little bit more about your personal thing, reach out to her, and then who knows, maybe she can work with you, and we'll see what's going to happen with that. Thank you.